Well, I guess CM Punk's return to WWE has really reignited, and re-sparked the interest for WBD to look into WWE, as an acquisition, mostly Monday Night Raw. Now, of course, a lot of people will hear this and be like, there's no way that's going to happen. WBD is AEW country, or AEW networks. And that's true. As of right now, they are the home network of AEW. But as I've said before in a previous video, who's to say AEW, unfortunately, could suffer the same fate as ECW. And what I mean, just to let you guys know again, ECW thought they had a major breakthrough by signing with the Nashville network, TNN. Only to find out that what that really was more of an experiment to see if wrestling would fly on their network. And when they found out it would, they basically had the momentum they needed during those media rights deals back then to bring WWE Raw over to TNN. And then rename themselves not the Nashville network, but the National Network, if you will. Anyway, after that, ECW went back to being syndicated, hardcore TV as they call it, and the rest is history. But I bring that up because of the fact that we potentially could be looking at something similar with AEW. Now, AEW has been on TBS and TNT, the WBD networks, a lot longer than ECW was on TNN. So they have that advantage to try to remain. But if you're going to pick between the two, and kind of ask yourself, okay, what is the most lucrative one that we could utilize? What is the more, viewed one, the one that makes the most money, the one that looks big time, if you will? Who are you going to choose? If you say WWE, you'd be correct. Now, David Zaslav, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, David Zaslav, apparently met along with his team in New York this past week with Triple H, TKO co-chairman or executive chairman Mark Shapiro, and WWE president Nick Khan. Now, this was a report put out by PW Insider, one of the more reliable sources out there for information. However, you have Nick Hausman of the House of Wrestling, saying that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case because it would conflict with each of their schedules. But you have more reports, including some from Dave Meltzer, that kind of say otherwise. And even I think Fightful may have touched upon this as well, saying, what Nick's saying is not entirely true. Now, apparently, I guess Nick heard this, and realized, okay, maybe something's cooking here. Like there's, basically as the old saying goes, where there's smoke, there's fire. And where there's a lot of smoke, there's a lot of fire. So obviously Hausman knew something was up. He knew something was up. And I think had to retract or reword what he said. Basically in his own way saying, there is something there. And that maybe basically the conflicting of schedules is to throw everybody off. Because he said he talked to a higher up source in WWE, that said there'd be no way that would be possible. But how would a higher up source know about the scheduling of co-executive chairman Mark Shapiro of TKO? And how would they know the scheduling of Paul Levesque, Triple H, and Nick Khan? How would they really know that, unless they're close to all three of them? They have a very close connection, or they have a very close informant that's close to each of them, or whatever. How would they know that? They wouldn't. So that's why I think Nick Hausman may have retracted or reworded some of what he said, because even he, from what it sounds like, from what other people are reporting, JD, Just Alex, and others, that there seems to be something up. Like there is something there. We just don't know what just yet. We just don't know what, just yet. Now, Now, with that said, what is going to happen? Now, I've talked about this before. What is going to happen to AEW if the WBD decides to get, Monday Night Raw? What would happen? Well, either the WBD would have to work something out to where both could be on their networks, which is nowadays plausible, more so than they were many, many years ago, or AEW would have to seek out a new home. Now, some have said it would be kind of funny and ironic that AEW could end up on USA or even FX if Raw goes to the WBD, which is possible. That is indeed possible, because I'm sure they would like to have a wrestling product as well. But we're not sure yet because nothing is, truly official or inked or basically pen to paper yet. We're not really sure. We're not really sure or anything. But, that's why we have to keep our eyes and ears open for whatever more information we get. Now, with that said, could AEW and WWE exist on the same family of networks? Absolutely. Absolutely. And why do I say that? Because even though it was for a brief period, when Destination America had Impact Wrestling, aka TNA, for a while, Impact was the only show they had. It was the only wrestling show they had. But then they made a deal with Ring of Honor. And this is the Ring of Honor pre-Tony Khan. Pre-Tony Khan Ring of Honor, they made a deal with them. So after you watched, Impact Wrestling, you would end up watching Ring of Honor. You would get basically 3 hours of wrestling, but 2 different promotions. And the reason I bring that up is because that was not that long ago. That was like what? The mid-2010s, I think? Mid to late 2010s? It wasn't that long ago. It may have seemed like it was long ago, but it wasn't. It was like six years ago, almost 6.5 years ago, maybe 7. But it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but it did happen. It did happen. And what that tells me is it's plausible that this could happen as well. And you want another example? Take a look at Vice. Vice has WoW Women of Wrestling, right? WoW Superheroes, or WoW Superheroines. And at a time they also had Major League Wrestling, 2 different entities. And guess what? They were aired on the same network, hours different from each other, sometimes on the same day and night. So it is plausible. It is plausible for something like this to happen. Now, some might say, well, it can happen that way because AEW and WWE are major companies. There's no way they would want to share the same breathing airspace network-wise with each other. Really? Take a look at Axis TV. Take a look at Axis TV, all right? Right now, they have Impact Wrestling airing right now. I guarantee you it is, as I'm recording this. And afterwards, they have New Japan Wrestling. What does that tell you? It tells you that it is plausible. So I would not rule out the fact that David Zaslav, easy for me to say, I would not basically rule out the possibility of him coming out and saying, you know what, Tony Khan, we're going to keep you. We're going to keep you on Wednesday nights. We're going to keep you on, Saturdays. But the only way we're going to keep you is you got to agree that you will not have an issue with WWE being on Monday nights. That's the only way I think he'd be able to keep both, within the same network. Is if Tony Khan agrees to be like, okay, no problem, WWE on Monday nights, hey, as long as that leaves us Wednesdays and Saturdays, I'm cool. So to me, that's the only way David Zaslav could do this. That's the only way he could do this, and make it happen. Now, Now, here's the other thing, too. Could he just say, you know what, AEW, Tony Khan, you were great at first, you were promising, and then now you're faltering, you're failing, you're losing audience, you're losing attendance, you're losing viewership. You have, word is some of your talent wants to leave and go back to WWE or go to Japan. And that's not good in our eyes. So, you know what? We got to cut ties with you. We got to let you go. Bye-bye. He might do that, all because they're failing. But I think what could happen, because it's more plausible this time around than ever before, is if Tony Khan wants to remain on the WBD networks, and possibly get some kind of streaming deal with Max, I think Tony Khan will have to. I think David Zaslav will have Tony Khan swallow his pride, and basically have Tony Khan, agree to this unique, historic deal to where you have the two most prominent wrestling promotions, not just in North America but the world, on the same family of networks under the Warner Brothers Discovery banner. I think that's what's probably honestly, being more plausible than it's ever been, I think that's going to happen. Because you know that Tony Khan is not going to want to basically, be moved elsewhere. He's not going to want to have to negotiate with other, networks or services to, run his product, with them probably seeing how abysmal things have been getting. Like, yeah, the in-ring product is great, but everything else is like, they're not going to want to deal with that. They're not going to want to associate with that. So he's probably going to have no choice but to agree to these terms. Now, there is speculation, according to reports, that if WBD, does acquire the rights to Monday Night Raw, that WWE will take precedent over AEW, and that AEW, despite probably remaining on Wednesday nights and Saturday nights and everything, they might get moved off their networks. They might get moved off TBS. They might get moved off TNT and put on Discovery. Yeah. They might be put on Discovery. And, as widely available as Discovery is, not everybody associates Discovery with wrestling. They don't. It's the same thing with Destination America and Pop TV. Nobody associated them with wrestling until somebody said, hey, wrestling is, you want to see Impact, you want to see Ring of Honor, they're on Destination America. If you got it, tune it in. And a lot of people that might have had it tuned it in and said, oh, okay, that's cool with me. Even Pop TV, nobody's on Pop TV. We get wrestling. They had Impact TNA for a while. People probably said, yeah, it's over on the Pop TV. If you get that, go ahead. They probably tuned it in. Oh, cool. And then later on, even for a brief period, they had another wrestling promotion on Saturdays, on early Saturday mornings, Saturday afternoons. It didn't last long. But people probably said, yeah, that wrestling show's on there. People probably tuned in to see that. So even if AEW was to be moved off TBS and TNT and directly Discovery, directly straight to Discovery, I should say, there's no saying that people wouldn't tune in and watch it, because word would get around, because people would be curious, like, where'd AEW go? Where'd Dynamite go? Where'd Rampage go? Where'd Collision go? And then they'd find out from the hardcore wrestling friends, oh, it's on Discovery. Go check it out there. And there you go. It'd be a huge change in viewership numbers, because not a lot of people watch Discovery. It'd be a huge change, but at least by word of mouth, people would know where it's at. Because again, a lot of people get Discovery, to get the Discovery Channel, because it's widely available in all systems, streaming and cable. It's the same thing when you go back into the mid-90s during the Monday Night Wars. This is a huge reason why, WCW for 83 plus weeks kicked WWF's ass, in the ratings. It wasn't because they had the better product with the NWO and the Cruiserweights and so on. That helped. That was like the icing on the cake. But what it really was the fact that the Turner Networks at the time, when they were known as the Turner Networks, now known as the WBD networks. But it was at the time when the WBD networks of TBS and TNT, were more widely available, than USA. Yeah, USA is widely available more so than it was back then in the mid-90s. But where I lived in Oskaloosa, Kansas, the two networks that were, available to us on a wide basis to watch wrestling, TBS, TNT. And that's why they were able to kick WWF's ass in the ratings for 83 plus weeks. Again, not just because of the NWO and the cruiserweights and all that, which was the icing on the cake, but it's also the fact that they were more widely available. They were more widely available. That's why they were able to, maintain the position on top for 83 weeks until the WWF woke up and said, okay, enough of this crap. It's time to kick some ass ourselves. But you get what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying, right? It was more, you get what I'm saying. Basically, WCW had that advantage of being on, a family of networks that everybody could access without having to pay an extra package for. And Discovery Channel is one of those networks that's kind of like that, nowadays. It's more widely available as soon as you get your streaming service or your cable system or your cable package. It's more widely available than it was, prior. It's more widely available. So that way, if you want to watch AEW Dynamite and Collision, you don't have to worry about like, oh, where's that? You could just tune into Discovery on Wednesdays and Saturday nights and even Fridays, and there you go. There you go. But here's the thing. Even though Tony Khan probably is made aware of that, if he's being told any of this, and I'm sure he is, because he met with the WBD the day after, Triple H, Nick Khan, and Mark Shapiro did, apparently. He met up with them. So I'm pretty sure he's being made aware, according to what these reports are saying, that, hey, this might be a possibility, and, hey, this might be the network, the channel you end up on if, things go in this, direction. I'm sure he's being made aware of it, and I'm sure he's basically pleading his case to remain on the TBS and TNT networks. I'm sure he's pleading that case. And again, I think David Zaslav, easy for me to say again, I'm sure David Zaslav is looking at, Tony's case, and his reasoning to want to remain, along with, the case and reasoning why, WWE, Triple H, Mark Shapiro, and Nick Khan feel they could be a good asset. And I think, again, he's probably favoring more of WWE because, of course, they got CM Punk, which is a big factor because that's why Collision exists, because David Zaslav loves CM Punk. He wanted CM Punk, on AEW television, which is why they gave Collision to Tony Khan, that extra 2 hours so that CM Punk could have his own show and they can avoid any, personal animosity behind the scenes, But as soon as CM Punk got fired, Collision wasn't what David Zaslav was hoping for. It turned into just an extended version of Dynamite or extended version of Rampage in the eyes of a lot of folks. And I'm sure when David Zaslav heard that CM Punk was back in WWE, that's when as some of the rumors, or not rumors, but some of the reports came around, started to regain interest of, well, if WWE has CM Punk, and they're going to have him on Monday nights, well, we'll look into that now more. Because they know CM Punk's a merch mover. He's a needle mover, if you will, a ratings mover, an attendance mover. They know that. And that's why you're seeing these negotiations ramp up more so than they did before. Why they're being resurrected out of nothing, as some people looked at them before. And like I said, he's probably looking at both cases, both, discussions that he's had, both reasonings, that he was given. And he's probably going to favor WWE over AEW. But I'm sure, like I said earlier, what he's probably going to do is talk to Tony Khan. He's going to say, Tony, I know you want to stay on TBS and TNT. I have no problem with that. But you have to agree that you have to agree that if you're going to do so, you cannot, you have to basically, again, I think what he's going to do is he's going to have him agree that, he's got to play nice. Like, basically, if he wants to remain, he's just got to accept the fact that, hey, they're going to have WWE on Raw. On Monday, they're going to have WWE Raw on Monday nights, and they'll let him keep his Wednesday, Saturday, and even Friday time slots intact. They might allow him to do that. If he's willing to accept sharing, the same network space or sharing the same family of networks with his competition. I think that's what he's doing. I think that's what he's probably going to do, if not has already done. He's probably talked to Tony Khan and said, Tony, look, I know you like competing against WWE and Triple H, Paul Levesque. I get that. But, this is a game changer for us. They have somebody you once had and everything, and they're doing business better with him than you did. So if you want to remain, here's what you got to do. You just got to agree to accept them being part of this family of networks, and just, mind your own business and not take maybe any shots at them, which I think would be a huge challenge for Tony and his roster, to not want to do that, because it's like, hey, we're used to taking shots at them, but now we're hearing from David Zaslav that we can't take any more shots because they're now sharing the same airspace with them. It's going to be hard. But if Tony Khan wants to remain on TBS and TNT on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, then I think that he's going to have no choice. Now, the other thing that could happen is he might have to agree to let go of one of the other shows outside of Dynamite, to not only save money, but also make room for potentially WWE having the PLEs on, certain days, or the quarterly events like they're planning to do on certain days. So he might even say, look, if Collision, he might have told Tony Khan, might be on the verge of telling him, hey, if Collision doesn't, hit a certain rating point before the current rights are up, then we're going to have to cancel Collision. Because it's not where it used to be. It's not where it was when you had Punk. Now WWE Raw has Punk. We might have to cut bait with Collision and get rid of it. And I'm sure he's not going to want that, because that's not going to make his roster happy. It's not going to make his roster happy. Or they might say, hey, Rampage is not doing so well. It's doing worse than, Collision. We're going to have to get rid of Rampage. And again, that may not make his roster happy, because it's like you have these two other avenues for them to compete on, show what they could do, in front of the world. And yet you're basically saying, hey, we might have to take one of these, out to the back and shoot it, if you know what I mean. Put it out of its misery. But we'll have to wait, and we'll have to just, see what gets reported, see if anything comes to be, if pen is put to paper, I should say, in any scenario. And who knows, maybe sooner or later, a lot of people like myself, just Alex, JD, Solid Monster, OTRS Central, good mic work, we might be all coming on here on camera or audio wise and saying, hey, history has been made. The two biggest wrestling promotions in North America, if not the world, are now going to be sharing the same family of networks starting in 2024. That might be what happens. But again, we'll have to see what occurs. Again, if Tony Khan, doesn't want to get moved to Discovery, because you can't tell me he doesn't look at that like a downgrade, he's going to probably have to agree to play nice. He's going to have to. Agree to play nice. We'll have to see. I wouldn't be surprised if Zaslav says, hey, you want to stay on the TBS and TNT networks on your Wednesday and Friday nights and Saturday nights? And Tony Khan be like, yeah. Then I can see Zaslav saying, all right, I want you to go to WrestleMania on either night 1 or 2, go into that ring, confront Triple H face to face, shake his hand, say he's the better man, he won, and even tell the world why you brought AEW into existence. Admit that you're just a fan. Admit that you're just a fan that just wanted to prove fans could do just as good, if not a better job, than those that have been in the business longer. Or something like that. Now, I'm not saying he would tell Tony to do that, but, hey, you never know. If Tony wants to keep his shows on, TBS and TNT, you never know. But I think, honestly, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, I think Tony might have to just agree, to, swallow his pride, humble himself, and, just accept the fact that they're going to be sharing, airspace, even though on separate nights, with the WWE and Monday Night Raw. And that basically probably the catch is that he and neither of his wrestlers, neither of the talent that works for him can take shots, at the WWE, anymore. But what do you guys think? What are your thoughts on this now stronger than ever possibility? Now that CM Punk is on Monday Night Raw, exclusively. What are your thoughts on the WBD wanting Raw more so than ever? And how do you think this could affect AEW? Do you think they could remain on TNT and TBS on the current nights they have now? Maybe with the agreement that they, can't, take shots at the competition anymore, and that Tony Khan just has to, swallow his pride and humble himself to make it happen? Do you think maybe even Zaslav might even tell him, hey, go to WrestleMania, stand in the middle of that WWE ring, admit your defeat, admit you just did this because you wanted to prove a fan could do just as good, if not a better job than those that have been doing it for a long time? Do you think that's something that could happen? Not saying it would, but you never know. Or do you think WWE will be, or do you think WWE might take precedence, over AEW, and AEW might not just, remain on, on the WBD family of networks, but instead of being on TBS and TNT, they might have to go to Discovery. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts overall on this? And do you think it could happen? Let me know in the comment section below. Live chat during the premiere, which hopefully you have. And until next time, guys, I'll talk to you later. But yeah, give me your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you have to say on this.